Hello, I'm Ollie, and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, it being Tuesday, I'm doing a tag, and I've got my second original tag for you. So this channel is very much about genre fiction. Primarily crime, horror, pulp. Not the pulp really genre, but you know what I mean. Primarily that kind of genre fiction. But I do read sci-fi and fantasy and other sorts of fiction as well. Um, and I've wanted for a while to do a tag that was about genre fiction, and was struggling to come up with an idea for one. And then Juan at Plagued by Visions a little while ago did his fantastic Faces of Horror tag, and one of the questions in that was to name a book that was horrifying but that wasn't a horror book, and that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And I've been playing around with that idea, and I've come up with this new original tag, which I'm calling the generally speaking tag, which borrows Juan's question and then expands on it a bit. So thank you, Juan, for the inspiration. Right, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 questions. So not too big a tag, but hopefully one that people will find interesting and will enjoy. And the reason for doing this is one of the things I wanted hopefully to demonstrate with this is that whilst we think about books as being in specific genres, so I've got a copy of Dreadful Tales by Richard Lehman in front of me, which is horror, and I've got, what else have I got? I've got The Colour of Her Panties by Piers Anthony, which is fantasy. So we tend to label books as being in particular genres, but actually, books are not living things, but you know what I mean. They are broader than their genres. They are often not contained by their genres. And personally, I think the books that succeed, that are great books, are books that draw from lots of different genres and cover a lot of ground rather than being constrained. So that's kind of the reason for the tag. Anyway, let me crack on. So the first question is, borrowing from one, is a horrifying book that isn't horror. So for this one, I wanted to go with Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. So one of her, I'm not sure if it was her first or second novel, but one of the books she published before, Gone Girl, and before she kind of exploded, if you like. I thought this was a really horrifying book. I won't go into too much about why it's horrifying because that would spoil it. But it is a book that is, essentially it's a crime novel, a psychological thriller, I suppose. But there are many things in that book that are very, very disturbing about like parent-child relationships and things like that, and acts of violence too. And it's definitely a book that has stuck with me since I read it, for those reasons. The twist at the end in particular is really chilling. Okay, second one then. So obviously crime is a big part of the channel. So second question is a book with a terrible crime that isn't a crime novel. So for this one, the book that came to mind was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, which is a book about a reform school in the US for troubled boys, if you like, so kids who've committed what are perceived to be crimes and are imprisoned there. And there are, again, I won't go into too much detail for fear of spoiling it, but there is a really awful crime at the centre of this book, and it's about the people involved in that crime, trying to come to terms with it, really. So I thought that was a really impactful book about crime and justice and retribution, but not a book that is typically labelled as a crime novel. Okay, next question. A book about love that isn't a romance. So this is a book that I think definitely isn't within the romance genre, but has at its centre, and it really is central to the book, a really lovely relationship. That again is one that I have thought of since finishing the book, and that book is 11/22/63 by Stephen King, or as we call it in the UK, 22/11/63, which is his kind of time travel book about someone trying to stop the Kennedy assassination. But yeah, it's got a really lovely relationship at its heart. Okay, next question. A book with a puzzle that isn't a mystery. Um, so this one I struggled with a bit to come up with one, and then it hit me in the face that it's actually a series of books that has a ton of different mysteries in it. Is the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, and I think it's easy to forget that book starts. It really starts with a mystery, the mystery of who has murdered John Aaron, which isn't a mystery that gets solved until a number of books into the series. But there are loads of like smaller mysteries within that series of books where crimes are committed, things happen, and you don't know who's done them, and it's about the characters trying to get to the bottom of them. So yeah, a string of mysteries in that book. Okay, so next question then is a book with magic that isn't a fantasy. So I've kind of cheated a bit with this one in that I've gone with a book which is magical realism, which, I don't know, is magical realism a subgenre of fantasy? I don't really think of it as being so. I think of it as something quite separate. But anyway, the book I've gone with is Sharks in the Time of Saviours by Kawai Strong Washburn, which is a Hawaiian book I read a couple of years ago, which I thought was fantastic, which has a central character who has kind of healing abilities. So he has the ability to heal people, and it's about the impact of that ability on his life and on the lives of people around him. So yeah, a really fantastic book, which I thoroughly recommend if you haven't read it. Next prompt then is a book that thrilled you that isn't a thriller. So with this one, I wanted to go with a book by one of my favourite writers, Walter Tevis, and that book is Queen's Gambit, which is a book about chess. So it's about a chess prodigy. You may have seen even if you've not read the book, you may have seen the Netflix adaptation that was out recently. So yeah, it's a book about a chess prodigy, and there are chess games in that book which are some of the most exciting things I've ever read. They are, literally two people playing chess, but Tevis does it so well that they are as gripping as a gunfight in a western or a car chase in a cop book. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And I think that there's a real. I'm not someone who likes sports particularly. I don't watch sports, but I love sports stories, which Queen's Gambit is really. I love stories about like football teams and whatever where you've got the build up to the big game at the end. And I think those things can be fantastically exciting when done well and when you've really got a connection with the characters. Okay, final prompt then is a book with science that isn't science fiction. So this is another one I've struggled with a little bit, but the one I have come up with is Herbert West Re-Animator by H.P. Lovecraft. Again, so one that was famously filmed as Re-Animator, which is a brilliant movie. So this is a book about a scientist who is able to bring the dead back to life. It's very much a horror story, and it occurs to me that that's often the difference. You quite often get science of some sort in horror novels, and Frankenstein, sometimes is referred to as the first science fiction novel, and sometimes is referred to as a horror novel. And it seems to me that the difference between horror and science fiction, when there is science involved, is generally in horror the science goes terribly wrong, whereas in science fiction it goes very right. So yeah, maybe that's the difference. So yes, that was my brief 7-prompt book tag on genre fiction. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Let me tag some people to get the ball rolling on this one. So I'm going to tag Steve Donahue, because Steve gets offended if people don't tag him in new original tags, and plus he is incredibly widely read, and I'm sure he will have some interesting answers for these prompts. I'll also tag Michael K. Vaughan, who is also very widely read across genre fiction. Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, who similarly reads all sorts of different things. Gareth at Book Songs and Other Magic. David Wiley and AJ Dunn reads and writes. So all of those booktubers, I think, cover a number of different genres in their videos and in their channels. So I'm really interested to see what all of them say. But if I haven't tagged you and you fancy doing the tag, then feel free. Go ahead, tag me in it when you do it so I don't miss it. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing what people come up with for this one. So, apologies again for my nose, which continues to be very squeaky and annoying. Trust me, it's probably more annoying for me than it is for you, although I'm sure it's annoying for you. Yes, but as always, hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I will speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.